So there's a common impression in society that if you don't adhere to a religious creed, then you're less likely to be virtuous, or you're more likely to be an immoral person. Some examples of this perception are that, percentage-wise, religiously unaffiliated persons are the most underrepresented faith group in America at the federal level. So there's 16% of the American population does not affiliate with any religious creed or group whatsoever, but there are 0 federal lawmakers who are unaffiliated with any religious group. In the history of the U.S. Congress, there has been one person who does not believe in God, and he came out in 2007. His name's Pete Stark.
After he was elected.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, well after he was elected. Yeah. So he had served several terms before he ever was asked, do you believe in God? He said, I do not believe in a supreme being. So yeah, he admitted in 2007. But right, I mean, for a long time, right, there have been at least 10% of the population which are atheists, I believe, according to my statistics. Here's another one. Sociological studies, where people are surveyed, have found that the American public distrusts atheists significantly more than people with other labels, including Muslims, including homosexuals. So the sort of questions that this survey asked them were, do you believe that, does the following person agree with your vision of society? And so, Muslims were ranked higher than atheists, homosexuals higher than atheists. So the public also, according to these surveys, associates atheism with immorality, criminality, and hedonism, as well as elitism. So that's a work in progress for people who don't believe in a divine lawmaker, as far as their perception of their character, their virtues, or vices. Now, for those of us who are Unitarian Universalists, that puts us in an interesting place, because we don't officially have a religious creed that we adhere to. We do have 7 principles, which are creed-like. These are the 7 right here. You can look at your leisure. If you wanted to put one word on it, here's my unofficial one word list. Right, we can talk about rights, justice, hospitableness. These are ways of boiling down the creed in one word. I haven't memorized this, but maybe I will someday. Right? We can talk about navel gazing.
Number of religions share that one.
Yeah. So let me start out and actually read the whole thing. So we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In other words, we're concerned with people's rights, you might say. We affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, as well as acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Navel gazing is a word for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Fifthly, the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and society at large. That's democracy. We have the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We could say peace. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. These are all some good principles, right? But we don't say, okay, if you want to interpret these differently, you're out. There's an orthodoxy, right? Perhaps you could say we're more of an orthopractic tradition. It's an orthopraxy. In other words, there's a right way to practice living, and it has something to do with these principles, interpreted in one way or another. But we don't have a creed. We don't affirm officially that God has said anything to us to command us how to live. And perhaps this is what this would group us in with those who are unaffiliated religiously, because right, if you're right, if you believe that they're in the Christian God, right, the Christian God commands us to act in certain ways, and that can be perhaps a moral fiber or a fabric or backbone for living, right? As Unitarian Universalists, we don't have that to appeal to. So we need to think about what morality is, whether we can be moral people without relying on such a creed. And so what I'm going to talk about next is three things. I'm going to talk about what I want to call the divine law conception of morality. Then I'm going to contrast that with a harm-based conception of morality. And then that will lead into the question of moral relativism, of whether morality is relative to culture or to anyone's opinion. So first of all, the divine law conception of morality is says the following, roughly. Or, here's one way to formulate what a divine law conception of morality is. What it is for an act to be wrong is for it to be forbidden by God. This is also known as divine command theory. If you construe the forbiddenness of the action in question as a command. God commands us not to murder each other. He commands us not to steal. Then what it is that makes it wrong to steal, in that case, or wrong not to murder, is that God has commanded. Now, this is popular among many of the face of the earth, right? People who adhere to religions are often tempted by this view, right? They think, well, God's like an all-powerful being. He's a really good guy, or person, and so, based on those traits that God has, perhaps what His commands are, or what His will is, has something to do with what we ought to do. And if He doesn't have a command or a will with regard to how we have to act, then it's not a moral issue. There are a few problems we can raise for this view, but one that I'll mention here is an objection that has to do with arbitrariness. And so a common problem that's raised, a problem for this view is commonly raised, is that God could have forbidden any old thing, or He could have commanded us to do any old thing. So imagine this, right? That God, somewhere in North Carolina, let's say, you hear, no, let's make it Texas, right? It's like just right after Rick Perry prayer rally, and God opens up the clouds, and there's a loud booming voice from the heavens and a large bearded figure, and He says, "People of earth, I hereby command you every Wednesday to eat a liter of grass." According to the divine law conception of morality, this commandment from God gives us a moral obligation to eat grass every Wednesday. Right? Yeah, or another way of putting it is, God forbids us not to eat grass every Wednesday. Forbids us to refrain. And so, so it'd be wrong for us not to eat grass on Wednesday, according to this command by God, on this conception of what morality is. But this is maybe a bit unsatisfying. You might think, even if a very powerful being commands me to do something really weird, right? That doesn't seem like it's maybe a moral command. Maybe you do think that. Maybe God is such a powerful being, such an important figure, that does make it a moral issue. But we can take the thought experiment further and say He's not just commanding some arbitrary, weird action, but rather he's commanding something that's harmful to somebody else. For example, he opens the skies up in Texas and says, "People of earth, I hereby command you every Wednesday to sacrifice a baby," right? Or hereby I command you to cut off the genitalia of all females who turn 10 on their 10th birthday. Or hereby I command you, people of earth, to exterminate all of the Mexicans. Right? It's a commandment from God, right? God has said, right? We are commanded hereby to slaughter these people or to cut off these genitalia, and so not to do it would be wrong. This seems a bit problematic, right? That the will of somebody, even very powerful, could influence what we ought to do. Now, there are ways of repairing the divine law conception of morality. I'm presenting a simple version, right? Kicking around an easy target. But I think if we're going to discuss ways to repair it, we should leave that for the Q&A. And because what I want you to do is think through what I've been saying, what I'm going to say about morality, and we can talk through it in a dialogue. So, now what was offensive about these thought experiments where God commands us to do something really harmful to somebody else? Well, it was that it was harmful to the person. Right, so if it's, the reason I think that sacrificing a baby or defacing somebody's ability to experience pleasure sexually, right? The reason that that's horrific is because, well, it constitutes a harm, a loss to them, right? So the baby loses her future, her life. The 10-year-old is severely disabled, right? Loses out on a huge amount of pleasure. So it looks like what we're hinting at is a harm-based conception of morality. Now, when I talk about this harm-based conception of morality, I'm really going off of one of my favorite philosophers, and that is Bernard Gert. He is a retired professor of philosophy now. He was at Dartmouth. The connection between me and him is that I had his son. This is the bigger version of Bernard Gert's theory. I had his son here at FSU. Now, he wouldn't be the first person to put a harm-based morality, theory of morality forward, but perhaps one of the first to make it as explicit that harm is the basic moral concept. There are lots of other theories of morality, and you're not going to learn about Gert if you take an introductory ethics class. You're going to learn about theories that want you to maximize the good or always follow your duty. Those are great theories. They have a lot to do with reducing harm or avoiding harming others. But I think on the common sense conception of morality, it's harm-based, and that's why Bernard Gert's theory is about common morality, common sense morality, which plausibly, if you look at the examples of the rules that we use when we talk about morality, they tend to have to do with avoiding harming other people. So now one way of spelling out this theory would be to say, well, here's the moral rule: just don't harm other people. But, well, we need to say a bit more. We need to say some things about what harm is. There are going to be difficult cases about whether someone is being harmed, and also maybe some guidelines that are a bit more specific might be necessary or called for.